There is a moment in every connection where the truth quietly slips out, not through grand gestures, not through dramatic confessions, but through words spoken almost without thought. It's the moment his language changes. Suddenly, he's not just talking to you, he's talking from something deeper. He references the future without realizing it. He explains himself instead of avoiding the conversation. He chooses honesty over impressing you. This is important because real feelings don't announce themselves loudly. They reveal themselves subtly. When a man starts revealing his fears, his values, or his concern about how his words land with you, that's not accidental. That's emotional investment showing its hand. When you understand how to listen, not just to what he says, but why he says it, you stop guessing. You stop overanalyzing. And you start seeing the truth that was there all along. Words are often the earliest and most reliable indicators of emotional investment, long before behavior fully catches up. This is because language is not just a tool for communication, it is a reflection of internal priorities. When a man begins to care on a deeper level, his words subtly shift to accommodate that care. He may not consciously decide to reveal his feelings, but his language starts doing the work for him. Understanding this helps you stop waiting for dramatic proof and start recognizing emotional truth as it naturally appears. In the early stages of attraction, words are usually light, performative, and outcome-focused. He may flirt, compliment, or entertain, but the language remains centered on the present moment. There is little emotional risk involved. However, when emotional investment begins, his words start carrying weight. He explains instead of deflecting. He clarifies instead of disappearing. This is because once someone feels emotionally connected, they become aware that their words have consequences. They begin to care how they are perceived and how their communication affects you. One of the clearest giveaways is future-oriented language. This does not always mean big promises or explicit plans. Often it shows up in casual statements that include you in his mental picture of what's ahead. He might reference events weeks or months away, not as a strategy, but as a reflex. This happens because emotionally invested people naturally integrate those they care about into their sense of continuity. When a man sees you as temporary, his language stays temporary. When he sees you as significant, his words quietly make space for you in the future. Another key signal is emotional precision. When a man is emotionally detached, his language tends to be vague. He keeps things ambiguous to preserve flexibility. But when feelings deepen, words become more specific. He names emotions instead of avoiding them. He articulates concerns instead of brushing them aside. This is not because he suddenly becomes more verbal by nature, but because emotional investment creates a desire for clarity. He wants to be understood, and more importantly, he wants to understand you. Emotionally invested words also show up in accountability. Pay attention when he takes responsibility in his language. Statements that acknowledge impact, such as recognizing when he may have hurt you or misunderstood you, are powerful indicators of genuine feeling. Indifference avoids responsibility. Care invites it. A man who is invested emotionally does not just defend his intentions, he becomes curious about your experience. That curiosity shows up in the way he asks questions, listens, and responds. There is also a noticeable change in how he talks about himself. When someone begins to care deeply, self-presentation shifts into self-revelation. He may share fears, doubts, or personal stories that were previously kept guarded. This is significant because vulnerability is not a performance, it is a risk. People take emotional risks only when the connection matters to them. Words that reveal uncertainty, past pain, or personal values are often stronger indicators of real feeling than any romantic line. Another important aspect is consistency in language. Emotionally invested words align over time. He does not constantly connect himself or reset expectations. His language stabilizes because his emotional position stabilizes. While no one communicates perfectly, there is a noticeable reduction in mixed messages when feelings are real. This consistency allows you to relax instead of decode every interaction, because his words stop creating confusion and start creating understanding. It's also crucial to understand what emotional investment does not sound like. It is not exaggerated intensity without substance. Overly dramatic declarations made too early are often attempts to accelerate intimacy rather than evidence of it. True emotional investment sounds grounded, it sounds calm, it sounds thoughtful. The words may even be understated, but they carry sincerity. They are not designed to impress you, they are designed to connect with you. Learning to recognize these shifts helps you avoid one of the most common emotional traps, waiting for proof that was already given in a quieter form. Many people overlook emotionally meaningful language because they expect feelings to show up loudly. In reality, Feelings often whisper before they speak. When you tune into the quality of his words rather than the quantity or intensity, you begin to see patterns that reveal where his heart truly is. Words reveal emotional investment because they are harder to control than actions over time. Actions can be performed strategically, but language leaks truth. It reflects what someone is thinking about when they are not trying to impress or protect themselves. By listening for these subtle shifts, future inclusion, emotional specificity, accountability, vulnerability, and consistency, you gain clarity without confrontation. And clarity is one of the most empowering things you can have in any relationship. Real feelings rarely announce themselves in perfectly timed, well-rehearsed conversations. They tend to surface in moments when control drops and emotion takes over. This is why unfiltered moments are so revealing. When a man is relaxed, caught off guard, emotionally stirred, or slightly vulnerable, his words are far more honest than when he is trying to manage an impression. In these moments, emotion leaks through language before logic has time to intervene. When someone is emotionally neutral, they speak carefully. Their words are measured, safe, and often non-committal. But when feelings are involved, that internal filter weakens. Excitement, stress, affection, or even jealousy can cause him to say things he did not plan to reveal. These slips are not mistakes, they are emotional truths escaping containment. Understanding this helps you stop dismissing spontaneous comments as meaningless and start seeing them as data. One of the most telling moments is when he is genuinely happy or excited. In these states, people become expansive. He may express appreciation more openly, refer to shared experiences with warmth, or speak in a way that assumes closeness without checking if it is allowed. Joy lowers defenses. When a man feels emotionally connected, happiness pulls those feelings to the surface and his words naturally reflect that attachment. Another powerful window into real feelings appears during moments of vulnerability. This might happen late at night, after a long day, or during an emotionally charged conversation. When he talks about stress, fear, or uncertainty and chooses to share it with you, that choice matters. Vulnerability is selective. People do not open emotional doors randomly. If his unguarded words include you in his inner world, it signals trust and emotional significance. Conflict and defensiveness are also revealing, even though they are often misunderstood. When a man cares, his emotional reactions during disagreement are stronger because the stakes feel higher. Pay attention not just to what he says, but why he says it. If his words focus on being understood, correcting a misperception, or preserving the connection, that points to emotional investment. Indifference avoids conflict altogether. Care engages with it, even imperfectly. When expressed in subtle ways, can also expose real feelings. This does not mean controlling behavior or accusations, but small verbal cues such as curiosity about other people in your life or protective language that appears unexpectedly. These moments often happen before he consciously admits his attachment. The words come first, awareness follows later. Emotional instincts move faster than conscious acknowledgement. Another key indicator is how he speaks when he thinks the private or temporary. Casual comments, throwaway lines, or jokes often carry truth because they are not meant to impress or persuade. He may say something that assumes closeness, emotional priority, or mutual understanding without realizing it reveals his internal state. These moments are especially important because they are spontaneous and unedited. It's also important to notice what happens after an unfiltered moment. If he tries to soften, explain, or backtrack something he said, that often means he revealed more than he intended. The initial statement is usually the honest one. The correction is the mind stepping in to regain control. This does not mean you should confront or interrogate him, but it does mean you should pay attention. Emotional truth often shows itself briefly before being hidden again. Understanding emotional leakage helps you avoid forcing conversations that are not yet ready to happen. Instead of demanding clarity, you learn to observe it. You stop relying solely on planned discussions and start valuing the moments where authenticity slips through naturally. This creates a calmer dynamic because you are no longer trying to extract feelings, you are allowing them to reveal themselves. There is also a deeper lesson here about timing. Many men feel emotions before they feel ready to name them. Their words in unfiltered moments are not manipulative or confusing, they are simply ahead of conscious processing. Recognizing this allows you to respond with patience rather than pressure. You gain insight without creating resistance. Unfiltered moments matter because they bypass performance. They show you who he is when he is not managing an outcome. When his words in these moments reflect care, inclusion, concern, or emotional closeness, that is not accidental. That is emotion finding a voice. By learning to listen in these spaces, you gain access to truth that no scripted conversation could ever provide. One of the most common mistakes people make in relationships is listening for promises instead of meaning. Promises feel comforting because they sound certain and dramatic, but meaning is what reveals emotional reality. Words that carry real intent are often quieter, less impressive, and far more consistent. Learning to listen for meaning rather than declarations allows you to distinguish between emotional substance and emotional theater. When someone wants to impress, their language is usually grand but vague. They talk about what they could do, how they might feel, or how things could be someday. These words create possibility without responsibility. In contrast, emotionally grounded language focuses on the present and near future in realistic terms. It reflects awareness of circumstances, effort, and impact. Meaning lives in specificity, not fantasy. Listening for meaning requires paying attention to alignment. Do his words match his emotional behavior over time? Someone with real feelings may not always say the perfect thing, but their language points in the same direction consistently. They do not oscillate between intense declarations and emotional absence. Instead, their words gradually deepen in clarity, care, and responsibility. This progression matters more than any single statement. Another key element of meaningful language is consideration. When a man genuinely cares, his words begin to factor you into decisions, thoughts, and emotional reflections. He may say things that show awareness of your schedule, your comfort, or your emotional state. These are not romantic lines, they are practical signals of care. Meaning shows up when your experience becomes relevant to his language. Emotionally empty promises often sound urgent. They push for reassurance, exclusivity, or emotional payoff before a foundation exists. This kind of language seeks a reaction rather than connection. Meaningful words, on the other hand, feel calm. They do not rush intimacy or demand certainty. They leave space for mutual development. This calmness is a powerful indicator of sincerity because it shows confidence in the connection rather than fear of losing it. It is also important to notice how he speaks when things are inconvenient. Words spoken when it would be easier to disappear or avoid responsibility carry immense weight. If he communicates openly during stressful periods, manages expectations honestly, or explains rather than vanishing, that language reflects respect and emotional maturity. Meaningful words show up when there is something to lose, not just something to gain. Another distinction lies in how he responds to your emotions. Someone who is emotionally invested listens differently. His words acknowledge rather than dismiss. Even if he does not fully understand your feelings, he tries to engage with them. Empty charm deflects emotion, meaningful language meets it. This does not require perfect empathy, only genuine effort. Learning to listen for meaning also protects you from over-interpreting isolated phrases. A single romantic sentence does not define emotional reality. Patterns do. When his language consistently reflects thoughtfulness, inclusion, and accountability, those patterns tell a clearer story than any dramatic confession ever could. Meaning is cumulative. It builds quietly over time. There is also a personal empowerment in this approach. When you listen for meaning, you stop outsourcing your emotional security to someone else's words. You become an observer rather than a chaser. This shift changes how you show up in relationships. You respond instead of react. You assess instead of assume. And that grounded presence often invites deeper honesty from the other person. Meaningful words are not about convincing you of love. They are about demonstrating it through intention. They do not promise the future. They participate in the present. When you learn to hear the difference, relationships become clearer, calmer, and more authentic. You no longer wait for the perfect sentence to make you feel secure. You trust the steady language of real emotional presence, and that language rarely lies. When you step back and truly listen, it becomes clear that a man's words are far more than casual conversation. They are windows into his heart, the subtle ways he speaks, the moments when emotion slips through, and the meaning behind what he says all reveal his real feelings long before any grand gestures appear. Learning to recognize these signals allows you to see the truth without guessing, overanalyzing, or relying on empty promises. Real emotional investment is not loud or performative. It is steady, consistent, and often quiet. It shows up in how he integrates you into his thoughts, how he communicates honestly under stress, and how he expresses care even in unguarded moments. By tuning into these words, patterns, and intentions, you gain clarity, confidence, and understanding. In the end, the truth of his feelings is always there. You just need to learn how to hear it.